He's a revolutionary leader feared by many, but what happens when he meets someone who makes him forget he's even a president? This is not a speech, not a political moment. This is something no one saw coming. Ibrahim Traoré thought. He was ready for war, not for love. It was an ordinary afternoon in the heart of Ouagadougou. The sun hung high in the sky, casting a golden warmth across the busy streets. President Ibrahim Traoré, known for his strong and fearless leadership, had decided to take a quiet walk through one of the local neighborhoods. Dressed simply, without any formal attire or grand entrance, he moved with calm confidence, accompanied by only a few security guards who kept a respectful distance. The people were pleasantly surprised. Some waved, others whispered in awe, but most smiled as they watched their leader walk among them like one of their own. Ibrahim greeted vendors, nodded at elders, and gently patted the heads of small children who ran up to greet him. But then, as he turned a corner near a fruit stand, something unusual happened. He saw a young woman walking slowly along the roadside, balancing a basket of mangoes in one hand. She wasn't looking for attention, nor was she aware of his presence at first. But when her eyes finally met his, there was a sudden stillness in the air. Everything around him, the chatter, the footsteps, the heat, seemed to fade. Her gaze wasn't full of fear or formality. It was soft, steady, and real. For a moment, Ibrahim felt something shift inside him, something he couldn't explain. It wasn't political, and it wasn't planned. It was personal. That single glance, simple yet powerful, made him pause in his tracks. It was the first time in a long while that he saw someone who wasn't seeing him as a president, but as a man, a human being. And in that brief encounter, Ibrahim Traoré's journey took a turn no one, not even he, could have predicted. For a moment, Ibrahim Traoré stood frozen, unsure what had just happened. The look he had shared with the woman lingered in his mind like an echo. Her eyes held no judgment, no expectation, only a calm curiosity, as if she saw straight through the layers of his title. He took a quiet breath, turned to one of his guards, and whispered, "Give me a moment." Without any formal gesture, he slowly walked toward her, his footsteps soft on the sun-baked street. The woman noticed and paused, unsure whether she should step back, speak, or bow. Instead, she simply reached into her basket and, without a word, offered him a ripe mango. It was a small act, but it landed like a lightning strike. Ibrahim's face softened, and for the first time that day, a genuine smile broke through the seriousness he usually wore like armor. He accepted the fruit with a slight nod, and their fingers touched for just a second, enough to feel the warmth of that brief connection. People nearby went quiet, watching closely. No one moved. As if afraid to interrupt the scene unfolding before them, she smiled politely, still saying nothing, and he said softly, "Thank you. What's your name?" She answered, "Aïssata," her voice barely above a whisper. There was something grounding about her, something pure and unscripted. She didn't seem impressed by his position, and that's what made her stand out even more. He wasn't being treated like a symbol. He was being treated like a person, and in that simplicity, he found something he hadn't felt in years: peace. In that crowded street, surrounded by noise and people, the only thing that existed for him in that moment was her. As the quiet tension settled, Ibrahim motioned for his guards to stay back. He stood beside Aïssata, mango in hand, and smiled, as if they were old friends reunited after years. She adjusted the basket on her hip and looked at him curiously. There was no fear in her eyes, only honesty. He asked where she was going, and she told him she had just finished shopping for her small classroom. She was a teacher at a local school, trying her best to keep her students inspired despite worn-out supplies and limited resources. Her voice was gentle, but steady, the kind that made people listen without trying. Ibrahim listened carefully, nodding, not interrupting even once. He wasn't just being polite. He was genuinely interested. For the first time in a long time, he was having a conversation that had nothing to do with politics, military plans, or speeches. It was about children, learning, and the daily reality of an ordinary citizen. She told him stories about her students, how one boy wanted to be a scientist but couldn't afford books, how a girl drew pictures on scraps of paper because her family couldn't buy notebooks. As she spoke, Ibrahim felt something shift inside him, a sense of humility he hadn't felt in years. He realized how far the world of power had taken him from the world of people. But Aïssata wasn't blaming him. She wasn't asking for anything. She was just sharing, like one human to another, and in her voice, he heard something deeper than complaint. He heard hope, a quiet kind of strength that didn't shout, but still moved him deeply, and standing beside her, he felt smaller, not because he was weak, but because he was finally grounded in something real. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the dusty street, something changed in the air. The crowd stood still, quietly watching, unsure of what would happen next. Ibrahim and Aïssata had been talking for several minutes now, and though their conversation was soft, their connection was loud, without overthinking, without ceremony. Ibrahim gently reached out and took her hand. It wasn't dramatic or forced. It was quiet, almost hesitant, like a man trying to remember what it felt like to be human. A soft gasp moved through the crowd, even his guard stiffened, unsure whether they should intervene, but no one moved. Aïssata looked down at their hands, then up at him, confused but not afraid. Her eyes searched his face, and what she saw wasn't power or pride. It was vulnerability. His grip wasn't firm like a soldier's. It was gentle, like someone who hadn't held another's hand in a long time. He leaned slightly closer and whispered something that only she could hear. She didn't respond with words. She didn't need to. Her eyes glistened with emotion, and her lip trembled slightly as she smiled. It wasn't a romantic scene made for movies. It was real, raw, a rare moment where the people, from completely different worlds, stood on the same ground, as equals. No titles, no spotlight, just truth. Slowly, the people around them began to clap. It wasn't wild or loud, just soft and respectful, like they knew they had witnessed something they'd never forget. Ibrahim didn't let go of her hand right away. For just a moment longer, he held on to something that made him feel alive, not as a leader, but as a man who had just rediscovered a piece of his soul. In the days that followed, the image of President Ibrahim Traoré standing hand in hand with a simple schoolteacher spread like wildfire across social media. Some called it staged, others called it destiny, but those who were there knew the truth. It was unscripted, untouched by politics or planning, just one human connecting with another. News outlets picked it up, and headlines flooded the internet. The president and the teacher. Power meets grace, love in a mango basket. But Ibrahim didn't speak about it. Neither did Aïssata. They didn't need to. That moment belonged to them, not the media. Still, something shifted in how people saw their leader. He was no longer just a symbol of revolution or resistance. He was a man with a heart, a man who could pause in the middle of chaos to listen, to care, and to feel. Aïssata returned to her school, back to her students and chalkboards, but with a light in her eyes that even the children noticed. She didn't talk about what happened. She didn't boast or brag, but every now and then, when a child asked if she knew the president, she would smile and say, "Sometimes the world surprises you." As for Ibrahim, something in him changed that day. His speeches became softer, his visits more frequent, his focus clearer. He didn't forget the war or the struggle, but now he carried something else with him, a quiet reminder of humanity. That moment on the street didn't lead to a fairy tale romance or a public declaration. It didn't need to. It was deeper than that. It was real, and it stayed with him. Because sometimes, in the most unexpected places, we meet someone who doesn't just change our day. They change who we are. If you felt the heart of this story, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Fossil Chronicles. Join us for more powerful stories that touch the soul and inspire hearts.